Well, I actually love it for the Hawks because Jalen Johnson is a young superstar in the making. He's almost averaging a 20-point triple-double on the season. For Trae Young, he get a fresh start, and he goes to a situation where he's going to continue to put up numbers. He's going to continue to, he's going to put butts in seats because he's exciting to watch.
The Atlanta Hawks traded their franchise player Trae Young and somehow became better. The Atlanta Hawks traded their leading scorer and passer and their franchise cornerstone. Result? 11-game winning streak. Best defense in the league. But how does missing almost 80% of your offense lead to winning games? Is Trae Young really the problem at the A? Or is something else going on here? Well, we've got all the answers. This was supposed to be a rebuild, a teardown. You trade the star, grab some picks, and start over. That's how it works. Nobody told the Hawks that. They're beating Boston, dropping 141 on Brooklyn, beating Dallas twice, all without the guy they spent 7 years building around. Nobody saw this coming, so what exactly changed? Let's talk about it. To understand why the Hawks look different now, you have to understand what the Trae Young era actually was and how important Ice Trae was to the city. Trae was a generational talent. Nobody's disputing that. One of the most gifted scorers and playmakers of his generation. He could get a bucket from anywhere. He could find anyone on the floor. And when he was locked in, he made Atlanta must-watch basketball. He even brought the city to the Eastern Finals for the first time in 5 decades, with a bunch of scraps and with no other superstar. But there's one problem that even a common NBA watcher could tell by watching the Trae era. Trae needed the ball. Constantly. The offense ran through him, not just in the sense that he initiated possessions, but in the sense that the entire system was architected around his usage. If he had it going, sure, they could drop 130 a game on your head. But when he didn't, the offense stagnated. There was no plan B. Other players learned to wait. They learned to spot up and stand still. They learned to let Trae cook. But that's where all the headaches started. Atlanta was well aware of this. The Hawks front office surrounded Trae with shooters and centers like Clint Capella, who can run the PNR with Trae at a high success rate. He even traded for Kristaps Porzingis in 2025, a stretch big who could trace the floor, give Trae a lob target, and provide some rim protection. Atlanta fully believed in Trae, but since the ECF appearance, it's been a downward spiral, and the Hawks front office knew sooner or later they needed to pull the trigger. Was it entirely Trae's fault? Not exactly, because what Atlanta found after moving on from Trae didn't just change their offense. It completely transformed who they are on the other end of the floor too. And it's not being talked about in the media well enough. The Trae Young trade didn't just change Atlanta. It exposed something about where the entire NBA is heading. When you have a player like Trae Young, you don't build a system. You build around a player. And those are two very different things. A system has principles. It has rules everyone follows. It has a structure that survives when one guy has a bad night. And with Trae, he's the system. The Atlanta Hawks are Exhibit A of how the NBA has changed in almost no time at all. The era of the ball-dominant guards whose usage rates surged through the roof and whose style of play meant dribbling out the shot clock has seemingly come and gone before Trae Young could reach his prime. What Atlanta has now is a legit system, and a newfound franchise player that can spearhead this type of system. 6'8" versatile forward in Jalen Johnson. With the shift from Young to Jalen Johnson as the franchise player, however, the Hawks have embraced the new reality. Teams need multiple sources of high-level offense to compete in 2025 and 2026. Not just one guard who chucks up shots and makes his own plays. But you might make the argument, what about Luka Doncic, Jokic, SGA? Luka leads the league in usage rate, yet he plays alongside 2 other guys averaging at least 20 points and 5 assists. Jokic is the league's top passer, and Denver has 7 players averaging at least 11 points a night. These aren't one-man offenses, and now neither is Atlanta. You can't call that a one-man offense. And now, it's the same for Atlanta. The ball moves, genuinely moves. Not as a courtesy while everyone waits for the star to take over, but as the actual mechanism of how they score. Guys are making decisions, reading the defense, trusting each other. There are nights where you watch Atlanta and you can't easily identify who the go-to guy is, because on any given possession, it could be 3 or 4 different people. Right now, Atlanta has 6 different guys who average double digits a game, and 4 bench players who average over 9 points a game. That's valuable buckets. Atlanta also has the best assist ratio in the league, the percentage of made field goals that were preceded by an assist. A high team assist ratio signals an offense built on ball movement and unselfishness. Lots of hockey assists, kickouts, and shared creation. A low one signals more isolation-heavy one-on-one basketball. The direct effect of trading away Trae. The Hawks also have been one of the worst defensive teams in the league for years. It was just accepted as the cost of doing business with Trae. Elite offense, questionable defense. Hope the math works out in April. But without Trae's defensive liabilities, the Hawks came from one of the poorest teams defensively to become literally the best. The starting lineup of Johnson, Alexander Walker, Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu, and CJ McCollum is a nightmare for opponents defensively. Since the All-Star break, the lineup has a defensive rating of 94.2. To put that into perspective, the OKC, the best team right now defensively, has a defensive rating of 106.1. They have length, they have switchability, they have guys who take defensive assignments personally. Offensively and defensively, the Hawks are the better team than they were before the Trae Young trade. But here's the thing about the playoffs. What makes this team so good right now? The ball movement, the collective decision-making, the no clear go-to guy identity, might be exactly what hurts them when the game slows down and someone has to go get a bucket in the final 4 minutes. Is this real? Or is this a nice run that falls apart in the playoffs? That's a fair question, and I don't think anyone has a definitive answer yet. What Atlanta has built this season is genuinely impressive. 45-33 are not fluke records. You can't fake 78 games. But there's a difference between being a very good regular season team and being a team that can win 4 playoff series. And realistically, Atlanta can win 1 playoff series. New York, Boston, and Detroit have been one step ahead of everyone from the East. The question that haunts this team is, what happens when the playoffs slow down? When the game becomes more physical, more half-court, more about isolation and execution in the final 4 minutes of a close game? That's where they're gonna miss Trae Young, that ice-cold superstar who isn't afraid to take the last shot. Is Jalen Johnson mature enough to take the biggest shots of his career? The Trae-era Hawks had a cheat code for that situation. He could create a bucket out of nothing. This team's strength, the ball movement, and the collective decision-making could theoretically become a weakness when the margin for error disappears and you need one guy to just go get it. There are other teams looking at a star they've built around, wondering if the ceiling is real or imagined, wondering if the structure around that player has quietly calcified into something limiting, wondering what would happen if they just let everyone play. Atlanta is the live experiment, and right now, the results are not what the NBA expected. Trae Young was not the problem. He's just the last dying breed of ball-dominant guards still trying to change the course of NBA history. The Hawks didn't just trade a star. They traded an identity and built a completely different one in its place. The league expected Atlanta to disappear into obscurity. Instead, they might be sending a warning to every team still clinging to that one guy. The NBA isn't ready for what Atlanta is becoming.